Past players, past legends, past legends.
As underdogs was probably even a greater achievement in some respects.
Right, a bit of gloating here, quick, Pete. It's out of Moose Henwood. I'd never met him before, and it was last year after a Sydney game. One of uni mates said, "Let's catch up at the cathedral afterwards." And
Oh, yeah.
we're chatting away.
Yeah.
One of the guys says, Rubble, you're the sports nut amongst us. That's Russell Parker's brother over there. So I've yelled out, "Hey, mate, Russell Parker, 7 for 13, including a hat-trick to Winglenelg, the 73-74 district premiership."
Yeah.
And he walks over and goes, "Fuck me, it's Rain Man." And that. So I've sold him a copy of a book, and then Moose has gone, "Nope, you're not going to get me, pal."
Oh,
So,
really?
So he's Googled a Nord reserve side. And remember back then, all they did was initial, your first initial. So T Simons, it wasn't any of your name.
Yeah.
He goes, "Righto, if you can name every single player," this is from a Nord 1981 budget he'd Googled somewhere, "I'll buy a book." Money for jam, Simo. Very easy, that one. He threw the money on the table and went, too bloody good. So, yeah, a bit of fun.
You are the best, so he would have loved that.
He did laugh. It was good. Yeah. So.
He's a beautiful man, an absolute beautiful man. And, poor old Russell Parker, he played a lot of juniors at Glenelg, as you know.
Yeah.
Good cricket and all the rest of it. So, he had good friends with a lot of good older mates of mine, too, that come through the Glenelg grades in those days.
Yeah, no, he's a good cricketer. Part-time leggy in one Glenelg, played state cricket and just got thrown the ball when Glenelg virtually gone in a district final, and he took a hat-trick and turned the game. So, yeah.
Did he play league football at Glenelg, or did he go to South and play?
It might have been South.
Yeah, I think he went to South to play league footy. I don't think he played seniors at Glenelg.
I just remember that because at that stage, Australia were in New Zealand, and Ian Chappell made a big thing of it amongst the Australian team, so which Russell obviously heard about and greatly appreciated. So anyway,
right.
87, you're on the other end of it on a and probably North did deserve one in that time as well. But true that, mate. Although you're at you're at Hawthorn, aren't you?
Yeah,
apologies.
It's a funny story though. I played my year at Hawthorn, didn't play many senior games, and we had an unofficial football trip to Tasmania. They used to call themselves the Splinter Group, though there's about 20 of them: Buckenara, Rod Lester-Smith, Dermot, Jason, a lot of really good guys, Chopper Hanley, who came over here.
Yeah, for Centrals, yeah.
Anyway, we're at a pub in Hobart, and the game was broadcast on the ABC nationally at that stage. And I said to Jason Dunstall, who was sort of my mate in those days, "Can we go to a pub where we can watch it on the TV?" And he's gone, "Well, yeah." So they rang Andy Bennett, who was mixed up with Hawthorn, of course, and he picked us up 4 at a time in his car and drove us to this hotel. And by the time we got there, 15 minutes in the first quarter, Glenelg were already 5 goals down, and I'm going, "Well, that's not good." But I said, "Don't worry, we'll beat them. And anyway, half time we're getting thrashed, and at the end of the game I'm sitting there and I'm just broken hearted. And Jason walked over and grabbed me and said, "Simo, it's not your fault. Come and have a beer, mate." But I was just shattered. I couldn't believe we could get done by 80 odd points. But I mean, you understand the psyche of footballers. They lost 2 in a row. There's probably no way knowing they're going to lose 3 in a row to the same club. You just, whatever you had to do, you wouldn't let it happen. And they were just ultra aggressive that day, probably in the same vein as we were the previous 2 years, and thoroughly deserved it. And, my cousin Mike Armfield played in it, so I was happy for him. And Michael Noonan and David Tiller, they're some great guys getting around their side, and Wilds and all the rest of it. So no harm done, really, in the end. It was probably fair enough.
How about your year at Hawthorn, though? You didn't probably pick the easiest side to go and try and get a game and make an impact, though, mate.
Yeah, look, Chris McDermott and I had been offered a 3-year deal each to go to Brisbane Bears at the start of 87, sort of end of 86, and Chris decided he wasn't going to go, so then I decided I wasn't going to go because, as you know, we're pretty tight. So Glenelg signed Bone up almost overnight straight away. And I remember going home late to his place at Merino one night, and his sister had left a note saying Hawthorn were chasing him, but he signed to stay with Glenelg the next day. So Hawthorn must have looked around and gone, who's next? And it must have been me. So they started chasing me. Anyway, I signed to stay at Glenelg. Harry offered me a deal, and it was 2.5 times what I'd been getting before. And so I signed to stay at Glenelg. And then a week later, Harry came back to me and said the board aren't happy to pay me the money. And I said, well, if that's the case, I'll go to Hawthorn. So I actually got him to sign a waiver to get me off the contract. And Alan Jeans was ringing me, and it was sort of a funny time. And I wouldn't ever think I was probably good enough to go over there, but I was always intrigued to know what it would be like to be over there. And I just didn't think it through really. And I walked out of training the first night, which wasn't until January. I didn't go over there till January, but I trained pretty hard over here on my own. I walked out the first night and I looked around and thought, it just might be hard to get a game here. And
just a little.
that's how it proved to be. And I didn't get a game in the 2 night games we played. I played 1 or 2 of the trial games, and the last week before the first game, they always have an intra-club trial, which they still do these days, really. And it was a tribute to Dipper Day, and Dipper won the Brownlow in '86. So the last thing Dipper was interested in was playing an internal trial game the week before the first game. So I'm standing him, and I'm desperate. So I played really well, probably got best on ground in that game where Dipper wasn't really interested or trying. And I got picked the next week for the first game against Carlton at Princess Park, which was a sellout. It's only held 35 or 40,000.
Yeah.
It was a funny story because it was Stephen Kernahan's first game as captain of Carlton. He'd been there in '86.
That's right.
It was his first game as captain, and I'm lining up, and Hawthorn are unfurling the premiership flag from '86. And I'm standing there about 5 along with my hands on my back thinking, what the hell am I doing here? And I look over at Stephen and made a funny face at Stephen. And Stephen made a funny face back at me as well because it was his first game as captain. So it was like 2 16-year-olds from Brighton and
from the Bay. Yeah.
You know, thinking, how the hell did this happen? So that was a funny moment. But, look, at the end of the day, I played that game, got dropped, played well in the twos, got picked again against Collingwood, I think. I think it was at Victoria Park. I can't even remember. And then got dropped for a few weeks, got picked again. And a couple of these games in the twos, I'm getting 40, 45 touches in the reserves playing for Hawthorn, which is sort of what you had to do to get picked. So I got picked again against Sydney and kicked my only goal and thought I was probably right, and a few of the players said you should be right. And anyway, got dropped after that game, and that was it really. So Alan Jeans told me at some stage later in the year when I was talking to him about it that I ran too much and left my wing open, too open at times. If I didn't get the footy, they got exposed, and that was too risky. So he sort of made his mind up that they weren't going to pick me again, which was disappointing, seeing they picked me just for that reason, really.
Yeah, that is a bit bizarre. Yeah, because that was your strength.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know if they would have sacked me or not. They never said they were going to sack me. I went to Yabby Jeans and said, I'm going home, and he said they'd had a few phone calls from, I think, 3 clubs that wanted to talk to me. And yeah, one of the big mistakes I made was I said, no, I'm going back to Glenelg. And you know why? Because I was petrified Glenelg were going to win a premiership without me in it, and as they nearly did in '87. They got rolled, and I was a bit small-minded looking back. I should have toughed it out and stayed. Could have gone to Brisbane again, or I think it was Melbourne or Footscray back in the day, and I should have hung in there or stayed at Hawthorn and toughed it out, because Hawthorn had a habit of making blokes play
in the
twos for a long time
Yeah.
back in those days, and there's a million examples of it. But it's probably one of the few, if not only, well, it's not the only regret of my footy career, but it's nearly the main one, I'd say.
So you came back, and then Glenelg, it's good though that, full credit to you that when you came back, you were still very much switched on, huge Glenelg man, and yeah, so it was another, 5 years. And to go through, playing your 200th game would have been huge too, Simon, for you always being such a bloody Glenelg nut. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a funny story. I actually played my 200th game. Shows what a different world it was. I played my 200th game against Central Districts at Elizabeth, and the people from the club and the cheer squad came up to me and said, "Look, it's just too hard and too far for your 200th for your banner. So we're going to do it the week after at Footy Park." And I think I've got a photo of it somewhere. It's congratulations, Tony Simons, on 201 great games.
That is a classic.
Yeah. Oh, it just cracks me up looking back now. But I was just couldn't wait to get back and play at Glenelg. And I said to Laurie Rose one of the time, if I come back, I want my old number back, which they'd given away. He said, "No, you'll get your number back," and all the rest. So, bloke called poor old Tony McTavish, who'd worn it for a year, had to go back to number 11, which is probably a bit small-minded of me looking back. But I wanted my number back. It meant a lot to me, and I was always going to go back to Glenelg. There's no chance I'd ever go anywhere else. There was no discussion on money. It was, I'm coming back, pay me what you want to pay me. And I got injured a bit the next couple of years, pretty badly with, broken arm, like through the top of my arm and stuff like that. And that was before it. In fact, both those years, 85 and 86, for what it's worth, I probably missed 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 games both years. Once with a fractured thumb that they pinned, and one with a broken jaw and cheekbone, which I'd wired up for a month. So when I came back, I broke my arm right up the top near my shoulder, like snapped it through, got knocked into the fence at Glenelg Oval, and that pretty much buggered 1988 up. I tried to play again sort of 4 weeks earlier than I should have, and it just didn't work out. I played a bit of twos and desperately trying to get picked in the seniors for the grand final or prelim final, but didn't happen. So I had my share of it, but I was, really, really bought into it when I come back, and I wanted to come back and use my experience from what I'd learned at Hawthorn and set better training standards and all the rest. And it was probably, one of the great disappointments. We did not win another one when I came back. We had a few chances.
Yeah.
You then moved into obviously coaching in '95, and was that something that was on the radar initially, or was it something that you fell into?
The actual story was I was sitting at the Seacliff Hotel with Chris McDermott at the end of 1992.
Gee, why does that not surprise me? Yep, go on.
Yeah. And we'd always talked, all of us, about coaching and all the rest. And Bone was still well and truly, he's probably, if he wasn't captain of the Crows, Tony would have been. And Chris just looked at me and said, "Well, you're going to have to coach Glenelg." So I went to Victor Harbour for 2 years, 83, 84. And Choco was coaching Glenelg. And I remember, and Choco and I have sorted this out since, but Choco was in the paper saying that he would only coach Glenelg in 95 if he didn't get a better offer in the AFL. And I rang Glenn Elliott, who I'd never even met in those days, and said, "Is this what we've come to? Someone will coach our great club if he doesn't get a better chance, a better opportunity." He said, "Oh, it's not quite like that." And anyway, Bones said, "Well, you're going to have to pursue it." So I did pursue it through the board at the time. They kept saying, "There's no job there. Choco's doing it." I'm saying, "Well, that's not going to happen." And we were a bit clever the way we pursued it. Really, poor old Choco was probably looking for a slightly better deal, and Glenelg weren't going to give him that. And they knew I was sort of waiting in the wings. And looking back, I mean, I was probably too young for it. I was 32, single, it was probably not the right call. And I've said many times since, really, it would have been better for Glenelg if they'd kept Choco, because he was a far better coach than I was ever going to be. And it was hard for him because Glenelg people never took to him, being that he was a big Port Adelaide man. Choco was very single-minded, as we all know,
Yeah.
and was always going to do it his way, and that didn't endear him, to our supporters. But, I took over a bunch of blokes who were probably sad to see Choco finish up, to be quite frank. Chiggy and Simon Hill and Alan Bartlett and blokes who'd been around for a little bit in those days, and that I'd played with, underneath would have been quite disappointed that Choco had gone. So it probably wasn't a great move, but I loved it. But it was a tough time because we didn't have the infrastructure. And I was working full time at Lenny's, or the Watermark, as it sort of was becoming at the time, and I had a full time job down there, running the bottle shop or running the hotel at one stage, and trying to coach Glenelg. And you didn't have really any support. There was no football director as such. It was sort of Glenn Elliott as the CEO, then me as the coach, and then you had a junior development officer. So we're trying to do the recruiting and interviewing players and all the rest while you're doing a full-time job. So it was really not a great time in my life, and it took me a while to recover from it, to be quite frank, because a lot of people don't know, I had 2 one-year contracts. I never had a 2-year contract. I had 2 one-year contracts.
Right.
So I was fighting for my survival every week, and I think both years we started off pretty well. We might have won 4 or 5 of our first 7 or 8 games, I reckon, but we just couldn't hold it together for whatever reason. And when you're fighting for your survival, you make a few rash decisions, and I was arguing with the board about stuff that didn't matter, and arguing with supporters after games, and front page of the paper for fighting with spectators and rubbish like that, which was counterproductive to what we were trying to do. And if I could have survived one more year, if I could have got into my 3rd year, I reckon I might have done it for quite a while, but I didn't survive, and got the sack, and went back to Victor Harbor for a year.
And
so a bit sad, really.
Your time, though, you've been in the pub game for a long time now, Simo, and I really want to commend you that you're really a community person in the pubs. Let's also be honest, you certainly helped a fellow player in Alan Stringer, and we're going to try and get Strings on at some stage. You helped Alan out, and I really want to emphasise people out there. Tony sees the whole picture, so we mucked around a bit here. We have the Nord Glenelg stuff and a bit of fun, but I want to commend Tony that he sees whole community and does a lot of things behind the scenes for a lot of different community outlets, and sees the whole disability sector and all that side of things. So a massive thank you, society thank you, probably is as good a way of phrasing it as any, but you get it. You get it,
as
mate.
you know, he was going through a pretty tough trot for many reasons, as tough as anyone's done it, to be honest. And I used to ring him a bit, try and get him to some of the Glenelg functions, and even the SNFL past players function that I've been chairman of for maybe 15 years. And Alan actually used to say, "No, I've passed all that, Simon, thanks for calling, but I'm not interested." And sort of kept ringing him, and eventually we got met up and got talking about where he was at, and he was thinking about maybe getting back into a bit of work. And I said, "Well, let's just come and do something at the Warrenale, and a bit of gardening and all the rest." And it just sort of got him involved again in the community, and it was good for a while. He met some people and made some good friends there, and he'd have a beer after work and all the rest of it. So he went through a pretty tough trot, and as we know, a lot of blokes from the 80s at a lot of clubs have been through something similar, and there just wasn't the support mechanism around in those days as there is now, and it wasn't all right to call out for help either, as it is now.
Oh, look, we're going through it with Nord at the moment. There's still a lot of, while we've improved, there's still a hell of a long way to go for blokes to admit, hey, I'm struggling, I'm not okay, and look, I'll be honest, when I brought up to Pete that I was going to try and get Tony to come on comment on our show, I did think of this angle as well, and I do really think it is something we've got better, but geez, we've still got a long way to go, Simo.
Oh, have we ever? And there's blokes at every club that, I mean, some of the clubs, the stories are just terrible, as we know, with terribly sad endings. And I've had a bit to do with players from other clubs too that I've got to know over the years, as you know, Malcolm.
Yeah.
Because they're just really good guys, and you move on from football stuff. If you don't, you're a mug.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because there's a bigger picture, and there's some sad stories around, but there is a bit of support around now. You just got to, the trouble is, as we all know, people are good liars. So it's all well and good to share stuff on Facebook and all the rest of it, but you got to ring blokes. You got to meet with them. You got to look in their eyes and see what's going on, through their eyes. Because blokes are very, very good liars for so many reasons, and you really need to get face to face with guys and really ask them, and don't always believe them. Ask them more questions and say, well, what do you really mean? Well, what's really going on?
Yeah.
And if you call them out a bit, quite often they'll sort of look and go, well, maybe they can tell, and you get more out of them. So, but it's a fine line, boys, as we know.
Yeah. And of course, Glenelg delivering this year, so you certainly had that highlight a couple of weeks ago, mate.
Yeah, it was just a river day. I mean, we've got a bad history of losing them at Glenelg, as we all know, but we were clearly the best side all year. I only saw, to be fair, 4 or 5 games because I was out. My son was playing footy
for Sacred Heart
this year, so I was out watching him every week. But when I had the opportunity, I go to the Glenelg game. It just looked like we were so well drilled, and it looked like we were sort of a long way ahead of most of the sides that I saw. So it would have been a travesty if we didn't win it. But ironically, and not being that close to it, I saw the game where we beat Sturt by 105 points at the Bay in round 10, I think it was. And Sturt had a couple of their better players out that week with the flu. And what I thought was that if we can beat the undefeated side, as they were at that stage, by 100 points, they must have played a few blokes who were crook as well that day, because they just weren't very good. So clearly the team we played in the grand final was a good side, and full credit to Sturt. They probably had a few players out, and we had a couple out, but they probably had more players out, and tough to ride out. And, to get within 4 goals, to be honest, was I reckon a really good effort on Sturt's behalf. But I sort of felt like we were a 7 or 8 goal better side, but who cares on grand final day? You just want to get over the line. But it's really funny sort of watching it now. It's been, I haven't played since 1992. So sort of, 20 or 30 years ago, and the sirens come and you feel it coming, you stand up and you sort of get a tear in your eye. And I did the same thing standing next to Stephen Kernahan in 2019 when we won. And sort of, my kids have never seen me cry or anything, but you get a tear in your eye and you sort of got to take your sunglasses off to wipe your eyes a couple of minutes after the siren. It's sort of embarrassing, but I suppose it sort of shows you what it still means to you to see the club being in such a terrific spot. And, you would have said it the year before with Nord.
Oh, bloody oath.
Getting over the line the year before, and what it means to so many people and so many supporters. And, I see it all the time. Hotels are sort of around the Glenelg area, and you just see what it means to people. And, it was a real thrilling day. And I didn't have too much to do with the boys on the Sunday after the game, but they all came back, the seniors and the reserves and all the entire coaching group. We had them at the Morford Arms on Monday all day from about 11 o'clock through to 7 or 8 o'clock, and I settled in a bit with them on that day and had a few beers and a real good catch up with coaches and players and some of the guys that I've had a bit to do with over the years. One-on-one situations like Lockie Hosey and Max Proud and blokes like that. So that's when it really starts hitting home, doesn't it? So great time.
I think a lot of that also comes from Glenelg were, to be honest with you, on their knees a few years ago, and a lot of the work that has gone on behind the scenes to turn things around. I think not only is a credit to the club, but I think it just means so much to obviously past players. And
Nick Chickwidden's been vital in that way. Keith Coleman's a bloody legend amongst you Glenelg guys. Past players wise and that. Yeah, you do a fantastic job, Glenelg. I've got to be fair.
Yeah, no, well, so do Norwood, mate. You know, they're group, they get on the hill there and all the rest of them. We run that bar on where the old grandstand was, and you know, any home game you go to, there'll be 15 or 20 of the boys working in the bar or having a drink. Normally more than that, to be honest. And Keith drives all that, and you know, it's amazing. Like, you know, Peter Carey was president and still on the board, and he still does his shifts.
Yeah.
In the bar.
Yep,
so
I've seen
Piggy
that.
And Bomber Whelan, who's the you know, David Whelan, who's our current president. He does his shift, you know, in the bar nearly every home game in between all this other stuff. And it's sort of a good catch-up time anyway, but it's just incredible the amount of guys who get around it. It's like a day out. It helps a bit when the footy's going well on the ground, but it just shows you, you know, the strength of your footy club runs from your board, your president and your board downwards. And, you know, we've had an amazing board over the last 10 or 12 or 14 years. Blokes who've done it for a long, long time and have been committed. And the only way they can get off the board now is when they introduce their replacement. And it's got to be someone of a similar calibre, and that's how it works now. And, you know, the results, you know,
they do speak for themselves,
Well, poor old Brett Hand at the end, too, you know, cutting him loose after making the finals 2 years in a row was a pretty tough decision. Everyone really liked Brett. He's a ripper bloke.
He's a great bloke.
He was doing a pretty good job, but the club thought they had to make the call, and in the end, it's a strong board that does that, and rightly or wrongly, they got a result this year. So, not easy times to make those calls, and there's a lot of sympathy around for Brett. I'm sure he doesn't want our sympathy, but he did a great job and was a very popular bloke around the footy club.
He's a great bloke, Brett.
The footy club probably got to say they got it right because we won a flag. So, not easy, but
obviously he's
associated with them still.
Yeah, the Nord link with Brett because he played at Nord and that, and some couple other links with Brett with the Robinson family and that. So
he was very well liked around Glenelg and Tear.
Yeah,
didn't have any enemies around the footy club.
Full credit to Brett. He's back in the teaching game now, and look, huge credit.
He'll live a lot longer doing that. Although that's not that easy either. But it's probably a bit easier than coaching, mate. We've all been there.
And we'll finish off. I'm currently looking at a photo of Tony Simons carrying the ball with the Pioneer Homes as Glenelg's sponsor. You're actually holding the ball to kick on your left there, Simo, on a beer can in front of me. So I've started a bit of work with Print Rat Pack. So if there's
that's right. Yeah.
And it does look it's a great photo of you, Simo. We will put that on our page as well. And just Pete's nodding in the background here. So anyone out there could contact us or Malcolm Rulebook Ashwood on Facebook as well.
Well, as you know, Malcolm, I mean, any football club, I took we had a 1993 Premiership reunion this year at Victor Harbour Football Club, 30-year reunion. I was captain coach.
Yep.
And I got 4 cartons of those cans done up with the team photos.
Yeah.
All right? And we sold them as 6-packs down there, $50 a 6-pack, and we should have got more made.
And that's the sort of thing I'll be out and amongst with clubs trying to get clubs over the line in that regard as well.
And as you know, you've just got to email the photo through, and next minute they bring you a can and show what it looks like, and it's just incredible what they can do with this. So, good luck with that. I think that'll be a lot of fun for you. You'll be just the right bloke to be doing it, mate. I reckon.
I'll be having a crack, so I don't worry about that.
Yeah, I know you will. No, brilliant.
Hey, look, Tony, greatly appreciate having you on board. I admit. Go the bloody Bays. Yeah, and that's well done, mate. Seriously, great stuff and greatly appreciated. And I really, more importantly, appreciate your role, what you do out community-wise as well.
Thanks, guys. Lovely to talk to you, and hope there's something there that you can use and gives a little bit of entertainment for whoever might be listening.
We have plenty of listeners that listen in each week, and they always look forward to our segments with our past legends. And well done to Glenelg, and I know you're revelling in their victory, and who knows, they might go back to back.
Great. Hope you're right. All the best, boys. Great talking to you.
Catch up soon. Thanks, Simo.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Liking this podcast? Please like, rate, and subscribe.